Shana Tova to all of you. It is so wonderful to see you here. If you'll notice, we're almost back to pre-pandemic levels of our crowds. And for those of you who are joining us from home, we wish you a Shana Tova as well. In the great compendium of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, it says that the Cantor who leads the congregation in prayer during the High Holy Days must be at least 30 years old, be married, and have several children and an empty cupboard, so that when he prays on behalf of the congregation, he prays with a broken heart. Tradition requires that of leaders in our community, to have enough life experience that we are well acquainted with brokenness as well as joy, to accompany people through the most beautiful and heart-wrenching stages of life. And like so many of you, I have known unbridled joy and heartbreaking disappointments. I've waited in anticipation and anxiety and fear of the unknown. But I've also been through it with all of you. Every life cycle moment, from the naming of a baby to a bar mitzvah to a wedding to a memorial, together we have elevated our sacred transitions of life, the passages of time. Through your eyes, I first became acquainted with all the stages of life, from the cry of a newborn baby well before I heard my own, to the peace of a last breath on earth and a primal cry of grief. Every day, the rush of my family's life whirls on. The shift from the sacred to the mundane can feel a bit absurd. One moment, I'm sitting at the bedside of a person who is dying, surrounded by family holding on to the last bittersweet moments of life. And a half an hour later, I'm driving a carpool full of kids singing YouTube songs or dropping off teenagers at a play rehearsal. And I sometimes ask myself, what is going on here? Shifting from the profoundly important moments to the routine and the absurd can cause emotional whiplash. But Judaism holds deep wisdom to help us engage and cope with the beauty and the sheer chaos of it all. And I think the most meaningful gift that Jewish civilization cultivated and shared with the world is the concept of time, of the sanctification of each moment, each occasion, as unique and holy. One of my 9-year-old twins, Isaac, who's right over here, has a joke. He says, if I had 1 hour left to live, I'd spend it in school because it would feel like an eternity. Right, Isaac? We may laugh, but in honesty, we only truly value time when we clearly recognize that it is finite. Time, in reality, is our most sacred commodity, a treasure that is more precious than anything we own, more valuable than the rising or falling investments or retirement savings, more important than the value of our cars or our homes. And time is the great equalizer. No one on their deathbed wishes for more money or more things, no matter how wealthy or poor, how educated or accomplished. They wish for more time. They hold on to each breath of life, each look into the eyes of loved ones. They savor each opportunity to embrace. Inherently, we all know this. And yet, how often do we waste time? Do we squander it, treating it as if it were limitless? How often do we become slaves to the endless busyness of our lives, that our days become routine and monotonous? One day blurs into the next, and we take them for granted. Last year, our Temple Shalom Torah study group studied the book The Sabbath by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. Heschel was a luminary of Jewish philosophy who narrowly escaped the Holocaust. And I have to believe that those who were witness to that moment of civilization, those who went through the trauma of the loss of life and humanity, gained a deep insight into the precious nature of time. Heschel wrote of Judaism's special gifts in this regard. He said, Judaism is a religion of time aiming at the sanctification of time. Unlike the space-minded man to whom time is unvaried, to whom all hours are alike, qualityless empty shells, the Bible senses the diversified character of time. Indeed, the creation story we heard this morning makes special distinction in the accounting of each day of creation. All the wonders of the natural world are appreciated according to their own time, specific to each individual day. God speaks the universe into creation, surveys the work, and says, Vayehi tov, and it was good. We can appreciate each moment of time through Abraham Joshua Heschel's lens when he says, there are no 2 hours alike. Every hour is unique, and the only one given at the moment, exclusive and endlessly precious. You may have heard a story that was on the news this summer about a private plane that made an emergency crash landing in Martha's Vineyard. The pilot of the plane was 79-year-old Randy Bonist, highly skilled pilot, a beloved friend, father, and grandfather. His passenger was his wife, Robin, who had flown with him on adventures all over the world during 43 years of marriage. Randy and Robin were en route to a family reunion in Martha's Vineyard and about to make a routine landing. They had begun their descent. All of a sudden, Randy turned to Robin and said, I am not okay. He reached over to the throttle and landing apparatus. He accelerated and pulled the plane up before slumping over to the side unconscious. Robin sat beside Randy as the plane ascended once again, and she was sure that they were both going to die that day. But having been a frequent passenger and understanding aviation on her own, it was now Robin's plane. She collected herself as best she could to concentrate, muster the mental and physical strength to circle the plane back to the runway without assistance or communication from traffic control. She made a truly miraculous emergency landing, landing hard in the grass just beyond the runway, avoiding collision and unknown casualties. On the ground and in shock, Robin hoisted herself over her husband to get out of the plane, jumping into a puddle of jet fuel, and waved her hands for help from emergency services. Randy was airlifted to a hospital in Boston as emergency crews tried to save his life. Robin emerged from the plane, traumatized and in shock, but miraculously without a scratch. A few days later, I received a call from a friend, a local funeral director, asking if I was available to officiate at the funeral of Randy Bonist. I had seen the story in the news, but I was shocked to learn that this was a Jewish family from Norwalk. The Bonist told me stories of Randy's accomplishments and his passions, his love for his family and friends, his zest for life, his generosity of spirit. But in truth, I already knew him. I knew the depth of his character by his final acts on this earth. You see, I imagine that Randy must have known that this was his last flight, the moment he felt that something was wrong. Randy was a man closely in tune with his own health. He ate right, he worked out daily, and he lived with some trepidation of his own mortality. But faced with the most critical crisis an incredible moment of clarity took over. Randy performed an act of strength and selflessness. He pulled up the gears of the plane. He leaned over to one side so that Robin could access the controls, to give her the one thing that he lacked in that very moment: more time. Randy's loss and the true miracle of Robin's life go hand in hand. This family goes forward now each day with a reminder of the precious gift of time. Robin lives on to carry Randy's memory, to share in the lives of their precious grandchildren, to cherish each day on this earth, to mourn and to grieve, yes, but also to hope and to love and to share more life, to enjoy the sea and the sky again that was so dear to Randy. After speaking with Robin for the first time, I felt that our connecting was such a profound gift. We had never met before, but it was more than just circumstance that connected me to the Bonist family. And something was sticking with me. How do I know this family? And then I remembered. Most of you know that my husband Dan lost his job right after the holidays in 2020. Dan is very handy and good with carpentry. So trying to pick up the pieces and work during the height of COVID, he was hired to assist occasionally with a baby-proofing business. And in the fall of 2021, Dan went to help on a big baby-proofing job. 2 homes of the same family in East Norwalk, a daughter and a son-in-law and their young family, and the grandparents next door. Often when introducing himself to baby-proofing clients, Dan broke the ice by joking that Jesus was not the only Jewish rabbi carpenter. I can't take credit for his humor. But this particular homeowner, a friendly older man with a great sense of humor, instantly started up a conversation with Dan, and he identified it himself. He was also Jewish. His name was Randy Bonist. In their conversation that afternoon, Dan told Randy that he wished he could be closer to his own parents in Chicago. At that time, Dan's mother's health was declining rapidly. She had advanced dementia, and we had lost a lot of time due to COVID. It was difficult that we were so far away. Dan couldn't have a hand in his mother's care, and we couldn't visit with the kids while she was ailing. And she was slipping away. We had laid the plans for them to come to live in an assisted and memory care living in Connecticut, but those plans were falling through. Dan's mom simply couldn't go on a flight. She was, quote, non-transferable. Without hesitation, Randy scoffed, non-transferable? What does that even mean? That's nonsense. You'll get them here. I have a plane. You'll take my plane. Dan came home that day to tell me about this remarkable man. His instant and incredibly generous offer to help bring my mother-in-law to Connecticut. Randy didn't know us, but his generosity of spirit was overwhelming. He told us in no uncertain terms, do not waste your time with your loved ones. Time is the most important thing we have. We never took Randy Bonist up on his offer. My mother-in-law died in a facility in Chicago in May of 22 last year. And the last time our children saw her in person was over Yom Kippur in 2019. COVID and the circumstances of our lives had robbed my mother-in-law of 3 precious years with her grandchildren and robbed us of that time with her before she died. As a rabbi, you tend to look of all of life's experiences with a very finely tuned examination, looking for the Torah, which means teaching, the teaching in each encounter. Randy Bonist was an important teacher of Torah for me. He sought to give his wife, his family, even the strange rabbi carpenter coincidentally working in his home, the most valuable gift he knew, more time. Friends, I ask you to please extend your warmth and embrace to the family of Randy Bonist today, Robin and Corinne. Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. On this birthday of the world, what is our Torah? What is our teaching for today? I think it asks us, how are we using our time during our one and very precious life? Each of our days are numbered. Are we spending our moments nurturing relationships, or are we squandering them, thinking that there will always be time? Are we slow to anger? Are we easy to forgive? Do we release petty grudges and offenses, or do we bog ourselves down in ego, judgment, and resentment? Are we sensitive to the needs of others? Are we listening to the people in our community or in our lives? Are we thinking about what we can give as much as what we can receive? This accounting of our lives, our souls, our actions is the essence of the teshuvah that we engage with on these high holy days. And it is quite a challenge to live up to our highest selves. Teshuvah, with the Hebrew word at its root, return, is literally a circling back to try to right our course. And we must ask ourselves today, what are we going to do today to begin to right our course? Each year at our Yom Kippur healing services, we offer personal prayers of healing with members of our congregation. And there's one member of our congregation who always rises for a blessing. Suffering degenerative illness that has impaired his mobility for many years, he is nonetheless present to rise slowly for a prayer of healing. But several years ago, he asked me for a different kind of blessing. Shirah, he said, every year I come here and I ask for a blessing of healing. But this year I just want to say thanks that I'm alive. I just want to say, Shehachianu, blessed are you, O God, who gives us life, who sustains us, and who brings us to this joyous season. Now, every year that I see him in the congregation, I know what prayer we will say together. We will speak words of gratitude for time well spent on this earth, for the love of children and grandchildren, for the support of family and community. We will acknowledge the privilege of time that we do not take for granted. My husband Dan grew up in a suburban Chicago congregation led by an inspiring rabbi named Mark Shapiro. Rabbi Shapiro's sermons were deeply impactful over the course of decades, tackling subjects of social justice, civil rights, the Vietnam War, and the timeless frailties of human nature. A compilation of these sermons were edited together in a book entitled Close Your Books. Apparently, Rabbi Shapiro was famous for these words. When he began his High Holy Day sermons, he told his congregation, close your books, pay attention, listen up, be in this moment as I offer whatever wisdom I have gleaned and can impart to you. And of Rabbi Shapiro's most treasured writings was a poem he read before Kaddish each High Holy Days entitled, Plenty of Time. I went out, God. People were coming and going, walking and running. Everything was rushing. Cars and trucks, the street, the whole town, people rushing after time, to catch up with time, to gain time. Goodbye, sir. Excuse me, I have no time. I'll come back. I can't wait. I have no time. I'd love to help you, but I have no time. I can't think. I can't read. I can't read. I'm swamped. I have no time. I'd like to pray, but I have no time. You understand, God, they simply have no time. The child is playing, he has no time. The schoolboy has his homework to do, he has no time. The student has her courses, so much work, she has no time. The young couple have their new house. They have to fix it up, they have no time. The grandparents have their grandchildren, they have a time. They're ill, they have their treatments, they have no time. And so, all people run after time, God. They pass through life running, hurried, jostled, overburdened, frantic, and they never get there. God, you must have made a mistake in your calculations. There is a big mistake somewhere. The hours are too short, our lives are too short. You who are beyond time, oh God, you smile and you see us fighting it, and you know what you are doing. But we must not lose time, waste time, kill time, for it's a gift that you give us, but a perishable gift, a gift that does not keep. Oh God, I have time. I have plenty of time. All the time that you give me, the years of my life, the days of my life, they are all mine. Mine to fill quietly and calmly, but to fill completely, up to the brim. Ken yehi ratzon. May it be so in all of our days of the year to come. Shana Tova.